South Bay Families Connected.
I want to brag about my mom a little bit. As a nurse, she was somebody who talked about it. She was somebody who put death into context. Even before I lost my grandparents, she talked a lot about the fact that death was a part of life. She talked about pets that pass away, the trajectory of flowers, and how things fade and bloom. And so when things happened, and we came from a religious family, and that helped some, but I definitely had lots of questions. But her setting the groundwork that death was a part of life made it easy for us to have very deep conversations about someone's passing. The other thing you want to do, number two, is you do not want to delay. You are the very best person to tell your child that somebody has passed. You may not always have that opportunity. It could be announced at school, it could be announced on the radio, but you want to be the person, if you can, to explain that to them because you're the one that knows your child the best and you can say it just the way they need to hear it. So be the person to communicate that if at all possible. You also want to be, number three, very direct. You don't want to use terms like that person passed away or they're not coming back. If you have done number one, if you've talked openly about death especially, you'll be able to say that grandma died or Mr. Smith died or your piano teacher died, and then have a conversation about what that means. To be quiet, to listen, to care, to allow people to feel. Be direct, but be compassionate. And then number four, we all like choices, but children in particular do very well with choices when they're offered in these contexts. Many times children feel like they're being forced to feel or participate or to talk, especially when it comes to memorial services and rituals. You might explain to a child in an age-appropriate way, hey, we are going to have a service that honors your grandfather. Would you like to go? Here's what's going to happen. We're going to be talking about him. Then we're going to have some food. Here are some of the people you know that will be there. Would you like to come? And maybe would they even like to take part? Would they like to say a little something, sing a song, pass out something, be there with us? There's lots of things that kids can do, and there's times where a kid can opt in or opt out. Give them choices for how they grieve, because all of us grieve differently, don't we? And then you want to be a person that talks about your own feelings. You know, there's a boundary there. You don't want to show so much emotion that your child begins to feel like they need to take care of you. And there are plenty of times where the parent is so devastated by the loss of a spouse in particular that maybe it's difficult for them to share as much of their feelings as they might want to because they feel like they can't contain them. But showing tears, saying that you're sad over the loss of a grandparent or a pet too, gives a child permission, and you want to be that person that is open. And then you also do want to suggest a ritual. One is a ritual that begins the grieving, and one is a ritual that somewhat gives the message that we are moving on to another phase. I wouldn't say moving on, but moving on to a new normal. We're getting more back to normal, whatever that might mean. The first ritual, of course, would be something like a shrine or a memorial that's a spontaneous show of grief. You see that on fences, you see that on trees, you see that by the side of the road where somebody lost their life. You see kids put ribbons and flowers and drawings and notes and pictures. It's a spontaneous and wonderful thing, and it can be very helpful to create that venue at home or where the accident may have taken place, where it makes sense. Then there's the ritual that says there's been some time and we're going to have something that might be more permanent, like a marker or a tree, or something like raising the flag on a flagpole that says we are now moving on, we're going to remember, but this is a little bit more of an ending of the first part of grief. That's a different message. You want to be careful about not having that type of ritual too early. You know, in our field, we're taught that we don't hand someone a box of Kleenex too early. Makes sense, right? What is the message? You started to cry. I'm a psychologist. I hand you the Kleenex right away, trying to be nice. But it gives the unconscious message that, you know, I'm not that comfortable with crying, or maybe I'm okay, but you need to stop crying. You don't want to give that message to anyone. You want to allow plenty of time for people to grieve. And people will let you know when they're done with the initial parts of grieving. And then you also want to maintain routine. People are asking me many times, do I cancel class? Do we have class? Do I make my child go to school or not go to school? Routines are good. Maybe for the first few days there might be some flexibility there, but allowing a child to miss school all week might be saying, you know, there's more going on, this isn't the healthiest, because there's something very beautiful about getting back to the routine, being around people also that can share that loss, that understand what's going on, especially if something happened to someone at school or at work. There's a bonding that takes place that a child or even ourselves do not receive when we're by ourselves. Number 8, you want to offer a listening ear. You want to be able to identify feelings that your child has as normal. And I say when it comes to grief, normal is a very wide road. You know, there's lots of things that people feel that would be considered to be depression in another context. So much so that in our field, we don't make a big distinction between depression and grief and the early signs of bereavement or grieving. We might have the same kinds of things, a depressed mood, we might cry, we might be difficult to get out of bed. But with depression and grief, the only difference that we sometimes see, not always, especially at the beginning, we don't see it too much, is with grief, you might have good moments and bad moments. You might have laughter and then tears. It may hit you all at once. With depression, it usually is something that's more persistent. And there are kids and adults that have some underlying depression already, and then they lose somebody, and there's a little bit of a mixture of that. That is something you might want to talk to somebody about. But you want to be able to give people a sense that what you're feeling is absolutely normal, and here is what you seem to be saying. You seem to be very sad. I like to make it okay for people to be angry. You're angry that that teacher is gone. You're angry that this happened. You're angry about that driver. You're angry about cancer, whatever it may be. It's okay to express those feelings too. It's a part of it. Number 9, of course, as a parent, you want to help your child to feel better. But again, we want to allow some time to grieve and then maybe a redirection. Hey, let's consider making your favorite cookies. Let's consider watching that video that you like. What do you think about going shopping? What do you think about going out for a little bite or an ice cream? We don't want to offer that right away because, again, we give the message that we're shutting it down, but we do want to say when a person has grieved well for a while, it might be time to redirect them into an activity that would help them. And then number 10, you want to observe your child. You want to make sure your child is falling within the normal range of grief. If a child can't get out of bed for days at a time, can't go to school, is showing signs of self-injurious behavior, not wanting to live themselves, not making sense when they speak, just showing a major reaction that doesn't seem to be starting to fade after a week or so, this is clearly an indication that they need to get some more help. When in doubt, get people help. It's never a wrong thing to give people more help than they need. It's often something that's not optimal to give people less help than they need. And your child, of course, is no different.
South Bay Families Connected.